Okay guys, welcome to your first video class. Today I am going to explain the narrative tenses that you need to use when writing your story, the one that you are going to produce for this third partial. Remember that in the individual sessions that we have the previous day, we are going to work especially with three kinds of past: the past simple, the past continuous, and the past perfect simple. Okay, those three tenses are the ones that you are going to use to narrate, to describe. Remember that you are going to select a social event or an sports event as the one that I put in the worksheet as an example. So you are going to do pretty much the same that the author of the note that we have already read did. Okay, so we are going to start with the simple past. You are very familiar with this one because remember that at the beginning of the semester we studied it. We studied it when we contrasted with the present perfect, but we are going to retake it again because you are going to need it one more time. Okay, remember that the simple past, the uses in a story that you are going to give to the simple past is that they are going to indicate an action that has finished and you know exactly when this action was completed. Okay, for example, when you say I visited my sister yesterday, you know that you visit your sister yesterday. You know exactly when that action happened. The same with the following example. It says we went out to dinner and you say that you did that last night. Okay, so please be very careful. Remember that with simple past we are using completed or finished actions. Okay, remember that also you can use it especially in your stories when you have more than one action. What does that mean? That you are going to talk about also when you talk about routines or habits that you have in the past, but now in the present you don't have them anymore. For example, when you say I saw a movie every weekend when I was a teenager, what does that mean? You used to do this when you were younger, but now, as you are university students, for example, you don't have enough time to watch a lot of movies. Okay, so please be very careful also with that use. The third use, it is the one that has to do with a series and actions. What does that mean? This is when you have more than one action and you are making a description of this series. For example, when you say, this morning I woke up at 5 a.m. First action, I had breakfast. Second action, I took the bus. Third action. Okay, so here you have a series. And then you have, for example, you are going to use the simple past also to describe your characters. Remember that in the story, for example, the one that we read, you had three people that were your main characters. In your story, in your event, you are going to select the number of characters that you are going to use, and you are going to describe them physically as well as their character. Okay, for example, you can say he was a kind man. Here we are describing the personality. His hair was long and his eyes were sparkling green. Here we are describing the physical appearance. So remember that you are going to use the simple past to describe two things: the personality of your character and the physical appearance as well. Okay, so be very careful with these uses. And here you have the formulas that you are going to need. Remember that here normally we tend to confuse especially the verbs in past. I need you to be very, very careful with it. Remember that in affirmative, you are going to need verbs in past simple. Remember that we have two kinds. We have vowed, for example, this is an irregular, and the other ones, the ones that are regular, remember that you are going to have a termination ed. Okay, remember that we have these spelling rules. Normally you only add ed. If you have a vowel and a consonant, we double the consonant. If you have termination consonant y, remember that you are going to drop y and you are going to add ied. If you have a vowel and y, that's it. That's very easy. You are only going to add ed. So please be very careful with these rules. When you write, please review that you have done it correctly. And in the negative, it's going to be very, very easy. You are going to need the auxiliary didn't for everybody. You don't need to worry about the people that you are talking about. And then a verb in the simple form. This is very important that you notice that once that you wrote didn't, you don't need to add ed. You are going to add only the verb in the simple form as you need it. Here, follow your formula so you don't have any problem. And as well in the interrogative, guys, remember that you are going to have the auxiliary did, then your subject, and then a verb again in the simple form. Remember, if you have didn't or did, the following verb is going to be in the simple form. So please be very careful with those observations. Okay? So remember that any question that you have, write it down so I can solve it in the next meeting. When we meet again, we are going to solve all the questions that you have by now. And we are going to continue now with also with the pronunciation. Remember that we are going to have 3 kinds of pronunciation. The one that is ID, the one that is with T, the one that is with D. This practice, we have already done it at the very beginning of the semester, so please just remember that when you do the record of your story, I need you to be very careful with the pronunciation that we have already studied. Okay, so remember that we are going to have wanted, we are going to have helped, and we are going to have called. Remember sound ID, sound T, and sound D. Again, remember that we are going to have needed, looked, and cleaned. Okay, those are going to be the 3 sounds that we are going to have for the termination ed of my verbs. And let's continue then with the following tense. There is going to be the past continuous. This is very easy in terms of grammar. The complicated thing about the past continuous is to locate the exact period of time in which this action were happening. The first difference, guys, that you are going to find is that, for example, in the past simple, we are talking about finished actions. Here in the past continuous, actually, you are going to talk about progressive actions. Okay? For example, when you say, I was watching TV, what does that mean? That in the past, you were doing this, but you don't know when that action started, and you don't know when that action finished. So we are going to think about this action as a progressive one. So please be very careful when you think about this kind of past. This is the past continuous, remember. Okay, so you are going to use it especially, guys, when, for example, 2 actions were happening at the same time in the past. And we are going to call them parallel actions. This is very useful, for example, when you are giving the information of your surroundings in your story, when you want to give background information. You are going to use especially this tense. You say, for example, I was studying while he was making dinner. These 2 actions were happening at the same time in the past. If you say, for example, while Ellen was reading, Tim was watching television, the same. The actions were happening at the very same time. So remember that one of the first uses of the past continuous is going to be the parallel actions. The second use, and this is very important for you, in the story that you are going to write, remember that we are going to describe the surroundings. We are going to surround, well, not the surround, but we are going to describe the scenario in which the story is going to be happening. For example, here you have a whole paragraph that is telling you what is happening around the main event. Remember that the main events, you are going to write them in the past simple. Okay, so around this main event, that is I walk into the office, you are going to have some other actions that are happening around that main event. For example, the main event is I walked, and the other actions are happening around this point. Okay, so when I walked, some people were typing, Another ones were yelling, others were complaining. Okay, so we are describing what was happening at around our main event. That is the thing that we are doing with the past continuous. Okay, again, guys, if you have any question, if you have any doubt, write it down so I can solve it individually in your meetings, in your individual conferences. Okay, as I was telling you, the grammar for this tense is totally easy. You are going to use the auxiliaries was and were. Remember, was for the singular. When you have a singular, you use was. When you have a plural, use were. And after that kind of auxiliary, you are going to use an ing verb form. Okay, in negative, pretty easy. You are going to have wasn't and weren't, and then an ing form. For the questions the same, you are going to use was and were in an ing form. Please be very careful with the formulas that you are using here, so you don't have any problem. Okay, and the last past that we are going to study is the past perfect. This is very easy to understand. This is very easy to understand, guys, because the only thing that you have to do with the past perfect is that you are going to imagine a sequence. Okay, you are going to have two past actions. The one that happened first prior to another past action is going to be your past perfect. Okay, for example, here it says, I had never seen such a beautiful beach before I went to Kauai. Okay, what happens here? That first you didn't go to Kauai, and then you went, and the past perfect is the action that happened previously. Okay, you didn't see a beautiful place until you went to that other place. The same here. It says, I didn't have any money because I had lost my wallet. I think that here is clearer. Okay, what happened first? First you lost your wallet, and then you didn't have any money. Okay, so please be careful with that one. Again, we are having an action that happened first, and then the second one. Okay, so please be very careful with these actions. And in a story, for example, this is going to be very useful to talk about the things that happened previous the main event. Okay, the stative verbs is very important. That the stative verbs, for example, all those verbs that are about sensation, feeling, and all those things, we are not going to use them, or we are going to use them only with the past perfect. Okay, so if you have a verb of feeling, a verb of opinion, a verb of sensation, a verb of belonging, you are going to use only the past perfect. Okay, and the grammar is very simple. The only thing that you have to be very careful with is going to be the past participle form. Remember that normally you tend to confuse them, or you tend to forget them, especially the irregulars. So you are going to use one auxiliary for the past perfect. There is going to be the auxiliary had. We can shorten it by using apostrophe d, and then we are going to use a verb in the past participle. Okay, so please be very careful with this grammar. Okay, and we are going to stop here. Just I want to mention that we also have the past perfect continuous. We are not going to study that in this level. We are going to stop until the past perfect simple. Okay, so please be very careful with these three tenses. Remember that in your exercise 5, that in your worksheet, I need you to complete the chart. Remember that you are going to complete the chart with the uses that you are going to give for every single one of the past, and you are going to use as well the formulas. I want you to have the formulas there in your worksheet. So please complete it. If you have any question, remember that we are going to solve them next Friday. And I see you guys, I see you in your individual session of this week, so we can solve all the questions you have about the past. Okay, so I hope that you don't have any trouble with this one, and I'll see you soon.